Looking to do more with your electric drive? Volvo Recharge Plug-in Hybrids travel further in pure mode. That means more scenic routes, more spontaneous adventures. Volvo Recharge Plug-in Hybrids. Do more on electric. Visit volvocars.com/US.
Time for a quick break to talk about McDonald's. For just $10, get a combo meal that tastes like a million. Enjoy a delicious Big Mac, Quarter Pounder with cheese, Spicy McCrispy, or a regular McCrispy, plus a medium fries and a medium soft drink like Dr. Pepper, all for just $10. Don't miss out. Head to McDonald's and enjoy a combo meal that's worth every bite. Prices and participation may vary. Promotion pricing may be lower than meal pricing.
All right. We have a special midweek episode for you guys today. SQUATCHELLA is coming. But maybe you've gone to the desert and sweat and paid $25 for a bottle of water at Coachella. Mm-hmm. Well, we're doing SQUATCHELLA.
Still sweaty, but probably a lot hairier.
No sweat, because it's going to be in the Fisher Center. It's an amazing building. If you've been to Belmont University here in Nashville, Tennessee, this building is incredible. Multi-million-dollar building, and the facility is insane. And we're going to have a bunch of podcasts in here. Ninjas Are Butterflies, Expanded Perspectives, The Confessionals, us, After Action podcast. And if you want to get tickets, SQUATCHELLA.com. And we're going to have a good time. And we just did a podcast with a bunch of the dudes that are going to be there, and we had fun. Just kind of had an off-the-cuff conversation.
Yeah, this is really like a one-of-a-kind, first-of-its-kind sort of event, right? You can show up and participate and be in the room when we do some of these crazy paranormal interviews, everything from Bigfoot to UFOs and all the things you expect on Blurry Creatures, Confessionals, Expanded Perspectives, and all the fun that you would expect with the Ninjas guys. And then, of course, our friend Zach Bell with the After Action podcast. There's going to be a military flair as well. Lots of fun stuff, meet and greets, hangs.
Yeah.
And get to meet a bunch of the community. So come join us early August, Nate, right?
August 3rd, yeah. And it's theater seating, so you have to pick your own seat. And there's a VIP seat if you want to. There's a small select number of people. Get the VIP. We're going to all hang out backstage. It's going to be a step and repeat. You can take photos, hang out with your favorite podcasts, small Q&A session, and there'll be some food. And you get to hang out with all the podcasts backstage during the lunch hour. You can snag the VIP ticket. You get front row seating, and you get a special lunch hangout, and the rest of the tickets are wherever you want to pick, but pick soon because they're going fast. And this is all the guys that are going to be there, and there's probably some more people coming too as we add it on.
Yeah,
but
let's go.
SQUATCHELLA, Ella, A.
Ella, A. That was out of left field, bro.
Come to SQUATCHELLA. We'll see you guys there.
Come on down.
The history of our Earth is so different from what we can imagine.
Enjoy the journey.
The Smithsonian, that if they found out about a large skeleton somewhere, was to go get it.
I'm going to assume at least one person is right, because if one person's right, it busts the paradigm.
It all goes back to the fallen cherub. And the problem with the modern day church, they have a very truncated view of the supernatural.
This backdrop that's just pregnant with all kinds of meaning associated with this Mount Hermon event.
Welcome to Blurry Creatures.
And this guy defects from the kingdom. That's a big deal.
All right, so here we are. We got 4 podcasts on this episode, and we're talking about something cool. It started in my backyard. I called Tony, and I said, "You know what, Tony? I played a lot of music festivals in back in the day, and there was a ton of bands. What if we did something with a bunch of paranormal podcasts, and we had some fun name for it?" And then a couple of days later, I was like, "What about SQUATCHELLA?" And SQUATCHELLA is happening.
I was born.
Is that how it happened, Tony, or am I have fuzzy memories here?
I think you pitched SQUATCHELLA on the phone to me, and I was like, "Sounds good." You were pitching it to me on the phone. I was in my driveway. I yelled at my wife and said, "Hey, I'm not overbooked, right?" And she's like, "You're absolutely overbooked." I said, "Sounds good. Let's do it." So, and that's how it started.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
The music festivals are fun when back in the band days, you get as many people on one show as possible, and it was an all-day event. You sweated. You spent like $18 on a bottle of water, but you had a lot of fun. But what about all these podcasts that talk about the big guy, Sasquatch, and all the weird paranormal stuff out there? And so we have 4 podcasts at least on Squatchella so far. We don't know what the special guests are.
We've been telling everyone it's Joe Rogan. So
I was under the impression that we were special guests. This is no news to me.
But I guess introduce your podcast and tell us your weirdest story. We'll do this camp style, when you're like go to camp and you have to introduce your name and like your favorite yogurt or something,
Yeah. Should I go first?
Yes.
Go, Tony.
Go, Tony,
Okay.
go.
Name's Tony Merkel, host of the Confessionals podcast, and started the show 7 years ago and focusing on people's experiences with the strange and unusual. So we just sit down, had that conversation. When I first started the show, I didn't know how to do anything, and I thought I was going to have to be like a journalist. So I was trying to sit down and do pre-written questions and draw out all the information. And as soon as I threw it out the window and just sat down and started having conversations with people, and the show, I think, got dramatically better. So that's what we do. We sit down, talk to people about their experiences and their thoughts on all the strange stuff. And as the years have gone on, this show has gotten crazier because I have come to understand that reality is way, way, way stranger than I've ever imagined. And, as far as crazy stories goes for the show, that's like ask me which kid is my favorite, because we have a lot. So when you brought that up, Nate, as a talking point, I went to my YouTube channel and I just looked up as like my most popular shows, and the second most popular one is one of my ones that I jumped to right away. I called it Joshua Tree Portal Cult. And I can't even like go into the entire story. It was almost a 4-hour podcast. But essentially, this guy, he moved from Atlanta to LA. He's in the film industry, works for Netflix shows. And he was shortly after he was in LA, him and his roommate went to a bar one night, got drinks. And when his roommate got up and went to the bathroom, this other guy came over, sat down with him, and just started talking, became friends. And his roommate comes back, they're all talking, and the bar's starting to shut down. And the guy's like, hey, I know this other place that's open. You guys want to come and hang out? And they're like, yeah, sure. So they go to this other location. And as they're walking up to it, there was like all these like goth looking people walking in. And his roommate just kind of got weirded out. He's like, I don't think I want to go in there. And the guy that was on the show with me, his name's James. And he's just like, well, I'll see you back at the apartment. This dude is going to give me a ride back home after we're done hanging out. So he goes in, and that experience there was strange. Like a lot of weird people and weird things happening around him, but he didn't really think much of it because James is the kind of person, he doesn't want to prejudge anything. He just kind of really just wants to live life and just have the experience and see what happens. They're in the car heading back to his apartment, and this guy, I forget what we called him on the show. Let's call him Mark here. This guy gets a text message from his friends saying that there is a party in Joshua Tree. And he's like, do you want to go to this party in Joshua Tree? At this time, it's like 2-3 o'clock in the morning. And James is like, nah, man, I kind of just want to go home. I'm tired. Long story short, he talks him into going out to Joshua Tree. This is a Friday night, I believe. They arrive in Joshua Tree, let's say 5-6 o'clock in the morning, and it's an entire weekend thing. So they spend the entire day there. When he gets there, shortly after he gets there, some guy comes over to him, puts a bracelet on him that says VIP. And not everybody had VIP. Only James and like 1 or 2 other people had a bracelet that said VIP on it. And, he's just hanging out, chilling for the day. They're having drinks and just talking. And throughout the day, you get familiar with the amount of people that are there and the surroundings. There's this one girl there who seemed like as the day went on, she got more and more anxious with anxiety. And she was saying things like, I can't be here tonight. I can't do that again. I can't be whatever happened last night. And he's like, what are you talking about? She was very vague. She wouldn't tell him. And so he's going through the day and he has to go to the bathroom. Now, I called the show Joshua Tree Portal Cult. There was a very strong urge in me to call it the Porta Potty Portal because it all changed when he went into the porta potty. But he goes into this porta potty and he just takes a leak. It's not very long. He comes back out. And when he walks out, he said there was a noticeable difference in the surroundings. He said he was still there, but there was a lot more people there than there were just 2 minutes ago. And again, James is a real laid back kind of guy. He's like, oh, whatever, and he just kind of goes throughout his day. So the throughout the day there was I guess everybody was really excited about the two DJs that were showing up. There's these two, like, I guess twin DJs or something, and they when the DJs showed up, everybody got real excited. They start setting up for the party at night, and at some point through that process, there's this other guy who told James that, hey man, listen, I know you don't got a whole lot, you just came here randomly. This is your bed. You can sleep on it. It's for you this weekend. And he's like, oh, that's great, man. Thanks. So he has his place to sleep that night after the party. He's excited, and the party starts. They go into this tent that they set up, and the DJs are going. And when he goes in, he starts seeing people physically transform, demonic entities that I don't think he was identifying as that in the moment, walking around him, what you could only really call as vampires. I think he even said people with yellow eyes or something like that. There's a lot of weird things, and he's like, I don't know what the heck's going on here. He's like, this is tripping me out. He goes outside, and I'm skipping a lot of information here, a lot. But he goes outside where the guy who brought him is out there with another guy, and he's like, hey, is this place like tripping you guys out? And they're like, hey man, you need to just rest, relax and stuff. And they kind of walk him over to this one truck that has like this bunk in it. And I don't think it was his bunk that they gave him initially. Actually, it might have been. Either way, they said, why don't you just go in there and rest? And so he starts to crawl in, and he realizes if they close the door behind him, it locks from the outside. And he felt real uncomfortable with that. So he kind of like hops out, and he's like, no, I'm good. Because they started walking away, and he walks over, and they're like, aren't you going to take a nap? And he's like, no, I'm going to ride it out. And they kind of whispered to each other in each other's ears, and they're just like, all right. And they just go back into the tent. And at this point, he goes over to the guy who said to him about the bunk and everything. He starts talking to him, and the guy's being real rude to him. Like he doesn't want to talk to him anymore. And at some point around this time, this is where it gets trippy. The tent shoots straight up into the air, and a green portal opens up underneath it, and people are flying up in the air. And he's freaking out. He runs away. He runs into a group of people that were dressed in black cloaks doing some kind of seance. And one of the people started laughing at him, saying, you have no idea what's about to happen to you. And he starts running the opposite direction. And a lot of other things started happening to him that seemed to present this idea that at some point while he was during the day there, he went through some kind of dimensional shift. And we've experienced this on the show several times. And it's funny because like when I introduce my show to people nowadays, I'm like, where do I even start this rabbit hole with you? Right. But I've experienced several times with people on the show where it seems like not on purpose, but accidentally they go through dimensional shifts and they don't even realize it. Like everything seems like normal around them, but there's little small things that are off that looking back on it, it's like they were on some kind of like dimensional bridge between realms almost. And I think that's what kind of happened with him, because at some point he's trying to run away from this party through the desert. And it was like there's forces that like he was pushing through trying to get out of this. And he actually winds up going through the desert. A lot of trippy things happen to him there, the ground opening up around him. He finally makes his way to a hospital and is sitting in a waiting room asking for them. He basically asked them for a charger to charge his phone. And he's charging his phone. And oh, by the way, during this whole thing, his phone stopped working. He couldn't call 911. He couldn't call for help. It like was down. It didn't start operating again until he was at the hospital. But so he goes through this whole ordeal, and he has a voicemail on his phone, and it's from the guy who brought him there. And the guy's just like, hey man, you kind of just disappeared on us. We don't know what happened to you. Are you good? We don't know where you're at. And the voicemail should have ended there, but the guy forgot to hang up the phone. And when he puts the phone down, he hears this conversation between the two guys saying, do you think he knows what happened? Do you think he remembers what happened? And all this other stuff, like basically is seeming like they're trying to deceive him. And that was, it may not, I don't know if that sounds trippy to people, but it is honestly one of the most trippy experiences we've had on the show because of all the things that have been able to be validated through this story. After I released it, I had never heard of crazy bonker things happening in Joshua Tree. After I released it, I had several people contact me with similar stories. One guy actually came on the show. His name was James as well, and he was in the military, and he actually had an experience at this very location years before. And then there's another guy who contacted me who lost his mother and decided to go hiking in Joshua Tree to just blow off steam. He goes missing for 4 days, and the news covered it that, man goes missing in Joshua Tree, all that stuff. He sent me the video clips of it, and they searched this area and he wasn't there. And then all of a sudden they're searching 4 days later and he's there. And they're asking, they're like, where did you go? Like, we don't know what happened. And he's like, I was here. And they're like, you weren't here when we came through. And he's like, and what he said to me in the email, I don't know if he told them this, but he said, I was there, but I wasn't totally there. I was also somewhere else. Like, it was like a mirror world. And he said that there was black cloaked entities that would walk up to him and talk to him in a different language while he was there for 4 days. And so, like, something trippy happens in Joshua Tree. I got plenty of stories that have happened in the Joshua Tree area since I released this show. But yeah, Joshua Tree Portal Cult episode 512 is probably one of my favorite trippy episodes we've done.
Yeah, it gets wild. And it reminds me of music festivals. Every time you went into a Warped Tour porta potty, you came out, things were weird too.
Come out and see a lot of vampires.
That's why you don't use porta potties.
Yeah,
because I've always said that.
Yeah.
True. It made me think of like those Asian game shows where someone walks into a porta potty and then they roll up like a shipping container that has like a bunch of dudes in there, like at a conference, like in a conference meeting, and then someone walks out and they're like in a meeting like somewhere else. And they're like, wait, they go back in the porta potty.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude,
I remember those porta potties were like sought after. Band dudes would fight to get into them in the morning before they got soiled by the rest of the crew out there. And
yeah, because before it entered the mirror realm, because after so many times people use it, it just creates its own dimension, I think, from the fumes, the chemicals.
Tony, what's interesting about that is what it made me think at the end, what you were talking about with the guy in Joshua Tree. It sounds like a little bit like some of the things that David Paulides covers on Missing 411. Yeah, like you have people that just disappear, and then all of the areas are covered and searched, and then they kind of show up back in that area. Mm-hmm. Dude, I wonder, we've kind of hypothesized a few times in the show about there being UFO involvement, and Paulides actually has that film, Missing 411, the UFO connection. But the dimensional idea is really fascinating, that like they could sort of slip into some other place. We've talked about Bigfoot as well in that case, where there's a little kid that travels like, I forget how many miles, 8 miles over these two mountain ranges and ends up, instead of a bear took him, right? So you have these, but that's a fascinating idea that sort of you slip out of this dimension into somewhere else, and then you kind of come back, and you come back in the same place everyone's looked for you.
I mean, like you talk about people's experiences with certain things, and let's just keep it out in nature and the Missing 411 stuff. Like, people talk about how the woods just go deaf. It's just completely quiet. And, a lot of times people talk about, lots of predator in the area, and that's why everything goes quiet. And I just had this conversation with Wes last night from Sasquatch Chronicles, and he and I were talking about this very thing. And he said to me that, he's been hunting. I've never been hunting in my life, but he's been hunting, and
that's changing now. You're Tennessee Tony now, so everything's changing.
Yeah, well, I got two pigs in my backyard. I'm be processing soon. So is that hunting? I don't know. I've kind of cornered them for a year, long term.
If you do it blindfolded, it's hunting.
Perfect. Okay, I'll just make sure everybody clears back a little bit. But yeah, I mean, like what he talked about the environment shift and the quiet down, and how a lot of times people talk about, the predator idea, and, maybe, and this is, I think, me talking more than anybody else, but maybe it's not necessarily that a predator is in the area and that's why everything gets quiet. Maybe you're experiencing some type of dimensional shift. A lot of times people have these experiences when everything gets quiet. it's unnaturally quiet. And if it's just a predator in the area, like that doesn't, like the way people describe it, at least, I don't think that happens when a bear's in the area, when a cougar's in the area. Like it's like a pin drop. And maybe it does, but I think that there's a strong possibility that, along the lines of dimensional shifts and stuff, maybe that's what people are experiencing with the missing 411 stuff. And David Paulides talks about this very thing, and how if you have this experience where everything gets quiet and the environment changes around you, to stop walking. And if you're with somebody, to sit your butt down on the ground with your back against each other and wait it out. Don't move, let it pass. And so to me, that says that there could be some kind of dimensional shift happening. And we talk to people about, a lot of this kind of stuff, and how, even through lucid dreaming, you can accidentally astral project. Well, when you're astral projecting, that happens in another realm. And people have experiences where they don't mean to do it. It just happens. I had a guy in my studio here 2 months ago who accidentally, through a lucid dream, projected to my house and accurately described how my driveway is, what my house looks like. He drew my house for me. And like, there was a whole thing with that. Maybe that's the weirdest story. I don't know. But
unless he's a stalker, then that's not weird.
I've done my best to verify it. I'm 99% sure he isn't. And I do tell him when I talk to him on the phone, if you're stalking me, bro, we have a problem.
Well, then
I will shoot you.
People who have like near-death experiences, and then they say after the near-death experiences, then they get thrown into the astral a lot. And, that's definitely the most bizarre. Some of the more bizarre stories we've heard on our show too. But speaking of the woods and hunting, we've got our boys in Expanded Perspectives, who, I feel like you guys are more of a hunting show. You guys could have a massive hunting show, but you also do a paranormal show as well. And tell us some weird stories that you've heard on your podcast.
Okay, yeah, I think probably the wildest story that I've heard, because we've heard a lot of wild stories. As you guys know, when you start doing a show, the bigger you get, more and more stories start coming your way. Like in the beginning, we'd have to dig for them, but now they just have to discard.
How long have you guys been a podcast again?
Yeah, I was going to say, how long have you guys been at it?
Almost 11 years. Every week, 2 shows a week for almost 11 years.
Nice.
And
you guys are still friends.
Yeah, we're best friends. We grew up. I've known him since the 6th grade. I still live probably 400 yards from him. Caddy corner across the park. We hunt on the same deer lease together. We do everything together. Our kids grew up together. He has 2. I have 3.
You guys don't go up there to fish.
No, it's like Brokeback Mountain. We camp out, hang out, and we snuggle in our sleeping bags, kiss each other goodnight. You don't do that with your friends. You don't do that with your friends.
Obviously, every time I go hunting, I just wake up in a porta potty the next morning. I don't know.
Tony, you want to go hunting with us?
We now know our first planned night. That's the night's plans for the first night when we get there in August. So that's perfect.
I guess I'll bring in a porta potty.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got into podcasting because I work for myself and I'm in a car all day by myself. And when Cam, he used to work for the municipality around here, and he was in his car all the time by himself. And, when you listen to radio, it's just the same songs on a loop over and over. And then if you listen to sports talk, it's just everybody crying about the local team, or it got real boring. And so he was like, do you know what a podcast is? And this was back in the day where the iPod looked like a Bic cigarette lighter. I'm like, it didn't even have a screen on it. You'd have to go through iTunes. You'd have to find what you wanted. There wasn't that many shows. You'd have to download it. And then we would listen to it, and he would listen to it, and then we'd call each other all giddy and like, man, what did you think about that story? And much like Nate had an epiphany about SQUATCHELLA, one day we were in the backyard and we're like, why don't we try to podcast? So in the beginning, we had to collect gear. We didn't know how to do it. There wasn't that many shows out there even doing it. And when we tell people what we were doing, we'd have to say like internet radio, because nobody knew what podcasting meant. And we didn't think it would go anywhere. So we were just kind of doing it as a hobby, but it just slowly started building. And here we are, 11 years later. But I think for me, the craziest story I've heard is Cam's friend that had the sighting with the little people.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about the little hunter.
Yeah. So I've got I haven't seen him in a while. And like I said, I call him Doc, and I've hunted with him. I've been on this place before. It's down in South Texas. It's down along the Southwest Texas border as you get down into like Ozona and all that, as you're making your way over into Mexico. This dude is he's the easiest way I always tell everybody is he's a construction contractor is what he's always done. So he was no BS about anything. He's an old school guy. I think about to sell the business. Anyway, he's an older dude, never really into this kind of stuff. And then when he found out, of course, his wife found out about us doing the show and all that, it kind of led to this. And one day we're all hanging out and she's like, you're going to have to tell him. And he starts telling me a story that starts out as, it almost feels like he's pulling my leg. And as it gets in, you start getting more and more to where you're like, this dude's not playing. Like he didn't even want to talk about it. He ended up having an encounter, witnessing more than once 18-inch tall Native Americans. They were moving around. He found the first story that it talks about is there was it looks like a water trough, a concrete water trough that's buried in the ground. So it was poured that way for the wildlife out there. So it's because it's hot and dry, this whole thing. So there's javelina, there's turkey, there's white-tailed deer. There's a lot of this out there. So it was poured. So you can walk in there and it looks like powder around the sides of this in-ground water trough because everything comes to it. He said he was up there one day and there were what he thought were toddler tracks, but they were little tiny footprints and he could tell like little human footprints. So he freaks out. He thinks, is there a kid out here? Like, what's going on? He starts looking. The tracks lead off into the grass, and that's it. And he gets real eerie, creepy feeling. Fast forward, there's some things go missing around the deer camp. Stuff turns up all the time, little pieces of stuff missing that you wouldn't think anything of. Nothing major, like the cap off of like a rattle can, a spray paint can cap's gone, or a socket's missing, or little things like that's gone, easily misplaced. Jump into, it's like around the rut. He's up in the back part of the time. It's cold weather this time. And he's glassing over into this huge valley back behind him. And he sees what he thinks is javelina moving up the side of a hill, and it's several hundred yards away. He gets to looking at it. He said, it's not. So what it turns out to be, and it looks like an older Native American man and like 2 or 3 others. And they're making their way up this hill. They're wearing like clothing. They look like they have like skins on, all of this, but they're literally tiny. They're, less than 2 foot tall as they're making their way through there. So he watches it, can't believe it, doesn't tell anybody, still doesn't really bring it all up because he's like, look, the guys I hunt with, you can't talk about this stuff. They're going to just run him out of there. Like, what are you doing up here by yourself? You just getting lit and then just going out on your own? You jump in there again. It's during spring turkey season. And he said he starts calling on these turkey. They start making their way in there. He's trying to get where he can cut them off. So he hops off into this dried creek, and it's one of those ones, when it floods out there, of course, there's water, and otherwise there's never water in it. So it's all sandy bottomed. He said he's down, and the reason he gets off in it is because it's lower than the ground, so he can get down below the turkey eyesight, and then he can move up, try to get ahead of them, keep calling them into him. He works his way around. He said the creek makes a big bend to the right. He said as it makes a bend to the right, he kind of looks up, and at this point, he's probably less than 20 yards from like 3 of these little Native American guys standing there just on the lower edge of that creek looking right at him. He said one of them was like carrying a rabbit, looks like it's been killed. They got it all tied up and it's like slung over with the string. They've got their gear. They got stuff. He said one of them looks like it's wearing like the cap off of that spray paint can is like tied up and hanging off of his belt. Like, I don't know if they use it for a cup. I don't know what they use it for. He says he sees them and they freeze. And he goes, the look on their faces was they can't believe he sees them. It's almost a pure shock that not that they got found, but that I can't believe he sees me. He said he just freezes. He's in full camo face mask. He's in everything, like just froze there. He said the feeling that he got was so strange because it was a warm feeling, but he said it was like looking at a very majestic, like painting.
Time for a quick break to talk about McDonald's. For just $10, get a combo meal that tastes like a million. Enjoy a delicious Big Mac, Quarter Pounder with cheese, Spicy McCrispy, or regular McCrispy, plus a medium fries and a medium soft drink like Dr. Pepper, all for just $10. Don't miss out. Head to McDonald's and enjoy a combo meal that's worth every bite. Prices and participation may vary. Promotion pricing may be lower than meal pricing.
To be in the presence of this, he said it felt like it was old. Like what I'm in is something that's been here way longer of whatever this feeling is. He said he just nodded at him and kept going, never paid any attention. He said they watched him leave and then took off. That was like 2016, I think, 2017, right around there. I've spoken to him a few more times, and he has never seen them since. He was like, that interaction was the last time that anything ever happened. So he'd had it spotted. He had talked to a few guys on there. I don't know that any of them ever came forward. I don't think any of them ever had seen anything. They knew about missing stuff, could tell things had happened in and around their stuff, but that was it. But he said after that point, nothing went missing. They never saw them. They never saw any sign of them being on that place. Now, we also, tying into that story, had another story of a fella that was remodeling an old ranch house down not far from this area, probably within 50 miles or less of where this all took place. He said he goes in there one morning, way before daylight. It's in the summer. They're going to get started at daylight because it's so brutally hot. He goes in there. He said they were putting all their tools in 5-gallon buckets and just leaving them in there, whatever they chalk lines and all this stuff as they were framing and doing all this work. He said he goes in there and it's, barely can see, and the buckets had been turned over and stuff scattered everywhere. So he's like, well, I guess the coons came in digging through stuff. Maybe somebody left something and they got him. But he goes to looking and notices there's stuff scuffling around inside there, goes out some of the, where they hadn't put the windows in yet, jumps out the holes and takes off. At this point, he says he starts seeing this chalk line of his. Not the same guy. This isn't the same dude that saw him the first time. This is a different guy. He starts noticing this chalk line in there. He said it's strung out in the mesquite trees and all that. He goes out there. There's 3 or 4, again, 2 foot tall, what look like natives or brownies or Dewindies or however you want to describe them in this little mesquite flat watching. And he said they have been taking little things of theirs, of whatever was in this bucket, and spooked and ran off. He said after that encounter, we never had anything else go missing, nothing else. We never saw another sign, whatever it is. So whatever's down in there is like the land that time forgot. And you can slip off down in there and sometimes get some of that. So yeah, that's one of I would have thought it was straight BS if I had not sat there and had him tell me. It was one of those, like, he didn't want to even talk about it. His wife's the one that forced it on him to talk about it. And then after that,
was that warm feeling? Was the warm feeling that he had, was he peeing his pants? Because that's probably exactly what I would feel.
Probably. Yeah, right. Probably 100%.
Yeah. There's a porta potty when you need it.
When he's talking about it, he's not a romantic guy, right? Like, we're talking about a dude that, he's older, not a romantic dude. Like I said, no nonsense, straight, hardworking dude. So when he started talking about having these feelings, it was very strange for him to be like, man, it felt like wholesome. It felt warm. Like it felt like this is the way things are. Like it wasn't an eerie feeling, a negative feeling. He was like, I felt honored to even be there to get to see this at the whole thing. And I said, so what did you do? Cause he's like he rides a bike. So he like rides a motorcycle, a bicycle. So he like rides his bicycle down in there. So there's no smell, there's no sounds. You can slip around. So he was slipping around like a ninja the whole time. Right. And that's what he was like, man, I didn't even know what to do. He said, I nodded my head and took off. And just the way he talks about it, he was like, I didn't know any way to react. After it was all over, the funny part is after that encounter, he said he left, didn't even hunt the turkey, got back up, got on his stuff, went all the way back to the camper or back to the camp, started loading stuff up. He was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do next. And that's why his wife was like, you're going to have to tell him, because it kind of threw him for a curve. He's like, I don't have any idea what just happened.
I love it.
Of course you do. Of course you do. You just made Nate's day. Cam, Nate has this weird obsession with the little people. We talk about it on our show often.
Same.
Yeah, same. I mean, and we know that like Homo floresiensis is scientifically proven as a little person.
Yeah.
That, that they found in Indonesia. And I mean, it's proven that they've had that. And just like Tony and Luke were talking about with parallel dimensions and the missing 411 and stuff, a lot of the sightings of these little fae folk, it makes you wonder, are there parallel dimensions? It's something that's bled through. Because oftentimes in these cases, the creatures or little things that are seen, these fae, these gnomes, whatever they look like, they seem shocked. Like, why can you see me? You're not supposed to be able to see me. And they're just as shocked as the person that witnesses it. And so it's like, what is that? I mean, there's all kinds of cases from all over the UK, especially, of people seeing these little gnomes. Mm-hmm. Like in their gardens or sprites. They go by lots of different names, but it's only for a few seconds.
Kyle, it's interesting, man. Like what you were saying about this reminds me of a story that we didn't do on the show, But I go fishing up in Fort Smith, Montana, at a place called Refuge, and there near to that there's a big ranch, and there's a bunch of really old, hardened cowboys that work this ranch out there, and they have stories of the duende out there they see, and these are like it would be to me the same thing you're describing. This guy, like these are like no nonsense, work their whole lives, work hard, but they have these stories that they're real reluctant to tell. But they've told some of the guides that we work with when we go fly fishing up there, and said, there's these old boys up on the ranch, and they swear, and you have to get them to talk about it, and they won't talk about it unless they know you. But we've hung with them a few times, and they'll tell stories of these little people, and it is like a no nonsense. These guys aren't weaving tall tales to impress some fishing guides. Like these guys are dead serious that there are things out there, and this is on like this is on Crow Nation land. So you have some sort of weird things also happen on reservations, which
yeah.
Oh, we have several duende stories that come just like that. And like New Mexico,
I was going to say, some cultures treat it as like an omen. I know this guy that was doing like seismic surveys in Arizona. They were on a reservation, and for whatever reason, they had a bunch of guys they had hired that were Brazilian, and they come running down the hill because they saw a duende, and they quit and left the job site and never came back.
Yeah.
So to them, it was like, it's an omen. It's something that they don't want to mess with. It's a harbinger for something bad's going to happen.
Those guys said they thought it was a raccoon at first.
That's
during
what they thought
the day,
it was.
walking on its back feet.
What it was a small duende or little person, but it had like a rabbit or coon pelt that it was wearing.
Had a little walking stick, the whole thing. These dudes, like seven grown men,
crazy,
blasted
dude.
out of there,
It's
gone.
Crazy. Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say. So we were in Peru, and Luke and I took a trip with podcast, some of our fans to Peru last summer. And we're coming out of Ojante Tambo with some of those huge massive stones. And there's this marketplace, and this guy has these little like gnome statues that he's selling. And Tim Albarino's with us, and I'm like, ask him in Spanish if he's seen these things. And the guy then begins to tell a story. He's like, down to the years, like 18 years ago, I was up in the mountains here in Peru, and I saw one, and it was walking over the hill, and they're real. And then he said the same thing. He took off because it's a bad sign when you see one of these things. Good things do not happen. So you don't want to interact with the little people. That's for sure. And it's funny how you can have these stories on these shows of giants, people running into giants, and then people running into these little tiny Native Americans, and it just makes you scratch your head of what's possible and what's out there. And
if a 400-pound, 8-foot tall hairy hominid can hide out there, I'm sure an 18-inch tall duende wouldn't have a real problem.
Easier. Yeah.
Well, those poor guys.
Yeah, we've had people tell us that they've had stuff missing, like in Cam's story, stuff around the house, and if they started leaving little gifts, then like all the mischievousness would go away. Like whatever it was,
or liquor, little things like that out for them.
Little offerings.
Yeah, little shots of Fireball.
Yeah. Whoa. I don't know if you want drunk duendes around your place. They're problems already. You get them lit. Dude, that's all. It'd be like getting a toddler drunk. That's the worst idea.
Then they just start multiplying. Then you have a bunch of them at your house, and then you got to deal with them. And then the neighborhood has a problem. The HOA gets involved.
Right. Then they're throwing a party in Joshua Tree. Yeah. Exactly.
Right. Garage door comes up. They all take off. You got to try to round them up like you're herding chickens.
Next thing you're head first in a porta potty in the fourth dimension, and it's just a bad day.
Yes, by their feet. They're like, this is where we go.
Yeah. I bet you, Tony, you could start a business where you just get a flatbed trailer, put a porta potty on it, call it porta potty, just drive it around Tennessee,
Portal potty.
charge $10 to go in, see what happens.
I think y'all need to copyright the name Portal Potty right now.
I think that might be a plan. That's a good business plan right there. I think we start that up and see if it takes off. We can do a tour.
Let's just do one at Squatchella.
Yeah,
like a special porta
make it
potty
like a vendor
at
truck.
Squatchella.
Make it a vendor truck.
It's a picture made in the Portal Potty.
Yeah,
it's like those fortune things. You pay for the fortune, you get it. You go in the porta potty, and you get like some interdimensional message.
You open the door and Zoltan's there.
You come out with a keychain that's shaped like a turd.
Just a ring with a lid.
Thank you for
everybody deserves the lid ring.
And thank you for coming to our brainstorming session.
Called the Portal Potty.
A portal potty.
Tony, you should have them bring a porta potty for the stage, and when you start your segment on the
just come out of it.
You come out of the
I'll wheel it out.
Yes.
And I don't know how we do it. What is this? Is this Joshua Cherry? I'm scared.
You guys are missing right now.
Close it, open it again. Tony comes out.
But let's shift up north here to the actually I guess south, deep south in the Florida.
Deep South, baby. Yeah.
We got the Ninjas Are Butterflies guys here. You guys are, tell us a little about yourself, how long you've been a podcast, how you got started, and
sing us a song, dang it. Come on, that's what we came for.
You guys,
So we're Ninjas Are Butterflies. We're describe ourselves as jack of all trades and masters of all of them.
Every single one.
Yeah, we're very skilled in so many things.
Everything we say is true.
Everything we say is 100% true.
Definitely not a joke.
80% of the time. No, we started this podcast, a year and a half ago?
Fall of 2021. Yeah, we're about 90 episodes in now.
Yeah, and we just started it because we wanted to start a podcast talking about whatever. That's why we named it Ninjas Are Butterflies, because it means absolutely nothing, like our podcast.
But also means everything.
And it does mean everything.
Yeah.
To a lot of people.
Yeah.
No, we just...
we talk about comedy, conspiracy, and that's the big thing is we just try to find the funny in it. And so a lot of times we're not talking anything intergalactical or spiritual, and it's just poop stories and talking about our everyday lives and what's happening in the news. And then suddenly Josh is like, by the way, everything that you've ever known is wrong. And this is why. And there's a conspiracy that we just dive into. And so it's been really fun because like you said, like we used to be able to have to go out and search a ton, and Josh still does a lot of that studying, but a lot of it we've been getting like, hey, recommendations from a lot of people. So that's the cool thing is I know that we're never going to run out of material.
Yeah.
You guys been doing it, for 11 years. So I know that's got to be huge. Like a wonder, like, man, what are we going to talk about on our thousandth episode or whatever it may be? But
there's physical weight to the hard drive.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but we have fun with it. I'm obsessed with everything that doesn't make sense. And that's why I love all of y'all's podcasts, and we steal a lot of material from you guys, and we give like the Spark Note versions of all of your stories pretty much.
Yeah, we take out all
no
the
one knows what that is anymore. Yeah. No one knows what Spark Notes is. No one knows what that is anymore. We're too old. It's just like a payphone.
Sorry, Josh is 50 years old.
I am.
Yeah.
I mean,
but as far as stories go,
notes. Yeah.
Yeah. But as far as stories go, we've had just so many like special personal stories. Like you've had UFO sightings. One of our favorite episodes is me telling a ghost story that happened to me. But it was one of those things where a lot of the time I just didn't think that door was ever even there. That I didn't believe in ghosts, don't believe in aliens, that kind of things. But then when certain things happen to you, obviously, right, you're like, man, the door that I didn't even know existed just opened up, and I'm questioning everything. And so that was kind of my because I came from just like, I just want to have fun and we'll goof around, and then we would just get into these stories, and then Josh would be like, have you ever thought about this? And Andrew would be like, yeah, but this has a certain meaning. And it's like just this domino effect of just deeper and deeper conspiracies or maybe different meanings that were just right in front of our faces the whole time. I don't know.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I've seen what I know of 2 UFOs for sure. And the second time I peed all down my leg. So
yeah, we were in outside of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and a cabin. And just that night before, I had this weird interaction when I was just outside, and we're literally in rural. Like there's no neighbors. We are in the middle of the Tennessee wilderness. And I'm on the phone and I see like this weird black shadow thing, and I'm on gravel and I hear the gravel start running towards me. It's moving towards me, and it gets louder and louder. I look, all I see is this black figure, and I'm like freaking out. I get off the phone, I go inside, and then later that night, Josh is at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah, I was peeing off the front deck, and I felt like something was like watching me, and I look, and there was just this orb above the trees. I'm like, yo, what the heck?
Yeah.
I'm like, is that a star? Because it looks like it's like super close. All of a sudden, it just went like, and it just shot off over the horizon. And that's when I peed all on my leg and ran inside.
And then he looked behind him, and there was another light in the corner, but that was the Airbnb camera that was recording him apparently the whole time. So we're like, sorry, we peed off your deck,
Yeah.
Now we can, you can pick that. You can see that video online now. It's fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Patreon, baby.
Dude, I think my favorite story though that we've told is Andy, your ghost story, because we were filming a Halloween episode, and Andy's always told this story where there's a voice recorded, and he always heard it like, my name's Keegan. As the story goes, it was a recorder that was in a room he walked into on a ghost tour. This is very long story short, but he plays the recording on the podcast for the other guests who were listening. And it was the first time we had headphones on and like listened to it. And I'm like, hold on. me and another guy, we looked at each other. We're like, that didn't say my name's Keegan. We're like, at the same time, what'd you hear? We both said Andy Danoon. And so he's telling this ghost story with no idea that his name is in the recording.
Yeah, because we've told the story for 2 or 3 years before that when I moved down here. And when the recording came through, it was a really weird night. It kind of like opened doors for me. Like, it was Halloween night. It was like super dumb of me to do this, just to tag along on this ghost tour with my friend. And, looking back now, but when we've listened to the recording, he's like, hey, I have this, and I think this is what it's saying. So in my mind, it's like, my name is Keegan. Like all these things were like, what is this ghost? Like, this little girl, Keegan, poor girl. And then so we've always told that story. And then no joke, we had the one we redid on the podcast. We had people who had never heard the recording before. And so they're like, oh, wow. They heard it. That's super scary. But then I'm like, wait, you guys are hearing something different.
Yeah.
They're like, no, we heard your name. I'm like, no, there's no way.
Do you have it?
Yeah, I can find it. And then he plays it, and I think we both, you could see it. I'm so glad we were recording because it was
genuine fear.
Yeah, and his buddy that did this ghost tour thing, he's like a professional ghost hunter or something. Like
amateur guy, yeah, but he just does it. He has all the proper equipment. He's had very little success, but
he wears like the jumpsuit with the backpack and the big gun that like,
Yeah, I've seen those guys.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear it? All right, here's the recording that that was sent.
The story.
Oh wait,
jeez.
Oh,
that was not the ghost.
No, okay, all right, here he is. So when we hear
and
that,
we don't like that.
Because I thought it said my name is Keegan, but if you listen to it again, I was just like, now my buddy can't unhear it either. So scary. It's so terrifying. But that's the thing, is like, well, we can't explain that. Like I can't, and so it's hard for me to wrap my mind around or still be in denial of like, this certain spiritual realm not existing and on earth as we play it up in movies and stuff like that. But I'm like, that felt very much like a horror movie, and that felt very scary. So
yeah,
just fun things like that, lighthearted stuff,
just light work. Did you notice anything happening after that experience that you picked up that EVP and stuff? Did anything, like they talk about hitchhiker effects and stuff like that? I mean, did you ever have any other experices?
I don't know anything about a hitchhiker.
Well, no,
effect,
yeah, because he told me like you guys prayed and stuff. Like, hey, you don't have, or he's like,
yeah,
he's permission to.
Yeah, he has that. He had a whole protocol, and I just thought it was so silly when I first got there because he would just talk to the house, talk to whoever's in it. And I'm like, what is this? I love scary movies, so I'm like, this is fun, whatever. But at the very end, there's that prayer. It says, you do not have permission to leave with us. Like this is something we're trying to help you. And he's like, apparently he tried to go back there or something. And so I don't know. Yeah, there's nothing that I've seen afterwards, but it definitely has just changed my perspective to one, just respect that side of the unknown a little bit more. And, if you don't know much or you're not very well defended, you're setting yourself up for failure or for open attacks or something. And luckily, I feel like I'm not possessed. So that's good.
Well, hallelujah. Josh told me, after that, you did get addicted to hitchhiking, and now he seems.
Yeah, it is weird, and I do wake up in the woods covered in blood, naked sometimes once there's a full moon. But I think that's just my medication.
A great podcast idea where you just go out hitchhiking and then you record whatever happens and then you just put it out on the internet. And
this podcast is giving me so many good ideas.
I love it. But just go out hitchhiking and record whatever the hell happens, because I'm sure there's some weird stories that are to be told and some weird places you'll be taken.
I'd get murdered first episode. Well, that was a short run.
So I guess Luke, we can kind of dive into Blurry.
Well, I want to ask the guys if dinosaurs are real. Or is Helen Keller real? Is dinosaurs real? Did Bigfoot?
And are they the same?
Their dad? Are they the same?
And what portal did Helen Keller come out of?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Dinosaurs. Yeah, I mean, we got gators down here, which are like literal dinosaurs.
We got sandhill cranes that are like 6 feet tall. They're little dinosaurs. They cackle like velociraptors. Raptors.
Yeah. Raptors.
Yeah. They got them velociraptors down here.
Yeah. Helen Keller, I don't think so. I don't think she was real. I believe more in dinosaurs than I do in Helen Keller.
That's so sad. Isn't that so sad?
I agree, Josh.
All our minds are just warped.
Dude, I love your guys' show. Your show's so fun. It is God, it just cracks me up. Like I mean, you guys hit us out of left field when we came on with
It's
this.
just
With the Helen Keller's. Like, I didn't even thought about it. And they were talking
Luke,
about the
you
fact that
froze,
flat
buddy.
plane.
You're complimenting us. Can you say it again?
No one's letting that actually happen.
No, please say it again.
Yeah.
But do
He's
it
in
more.
a parallel dimension.
Yeah.
It's okay.
He's in the portal.
The great thing is with Riverside, it wouldn't have come out as Frozen at all. And so like the audience is gonna be like, what do you guys mean he's frozen? We heard every word.
Oh, really?
Good to know.
So next time somebody freezes, we just keep nodding. yes, like Jack Nicholson.
Could be saying all kinds of things about your mother. Which just told you no idea.
Sorry, boys.
I guess we'll talk about ourselves, our favorite topic. We Blurry Creatures started. We've been we're going on 4 years now. I guess technically it started in 2019, in the fall of 2019. Was like remodeling a house and just listening to weird stories like this. And not to go back to the hunters, but I had listened to 7 or 8 years, and it was always the hunters' stories that really convinced me. Something about like Cam, you were talking about, your buddy who's just this. He's not this kind of guy that makes up anything. He's almost too serious. And you hear about 50, 60 of those things and you're like, there's something to all of this paranormal realm. But the hunters and the cops and the military guys, they sort of are no nonsense fellas. And then when they tell their story, I was like, we got to do something. So the logo was designed in 2019. And then I asked Luke in the summer of COVID, hey, Luke, you want to do this podcast about Bigfoot, but we're going to kind of we're also going to tie in like sort of this biblical worldview, biblical perspective of like, how do you have faith and also hear all this weird stuff and kind of tie the two together? And, the Bible's full of stories about giants and all this other weird stuff that nobody wants to talk about at church, but we could talk about it on Blurry Creatures because it's just two dudes and no one's going to like come after us and try to like kick us off the church council. We can get as weird as we want. So
that's right. And we do.
And that's when it starts. About 4 years into Blurry Creatures, and we started talking about Bigfoot. And I'm sure you got your favorite story, Luke, that you've heard on Blurry. But I'll tell my favorite story about Sasquatch. We've heard some wild stuff, like some people who supposedly go underground and work with the military. And some of those stories are hard to wrap your mind around. But my favorite Bigfoot story that we heard on the podcast was a guy who came on the show. And he goes to, I think it was in South Carolina. He goes to camping at some Airbnb with his family, and he's into Sasquatch. He's thinking about it. His kids are, they're listening to the podcast and they're into this creature. Well, he's walking with his family along a trail one day, and they're just out doing their thing, looking for Bigfoot. Don't see anything. Don't have any experience. Come back home. They go into the cabin. And then he said he lays down in the cabin, small cabin, and all of a sudden, it sort of later in the night, his whole visual senses get taken over. He's like, it's like I'm watching a movie in my mind, but it's like I can't get out of it. I can't see anything in the room. I can feel the room. I can feel what's going on. I know I'm still in the cabin, but I'm watching a movie of me and my family walking through the woods, and I see the viewpoint of a Sasquatch in the bushes watching me and my family walking from earlier in the day. So his whole take was, this Sasquatch is watching him from the ridge, knows he's looking, they're looking for him, but he's somehow managed to record this event with his family. He said, I could see all the details, the trees. I could see he was behind a bush and kind of going in and out. And he projects it into my mind. And then he leaves the cabin. And then all of a sudden my senses come back and I'm back laying there. But for like a minute or two, I'm watching a rerun of my day before of this Sasquatch watching me. So he gets to see the viewpoint of the Sasquatch. I thought, we've heard the stories of them they can talk to you directly. They can mess with time and they seem to fade in and out, but a lot of mind speak happens where they can directly communicate with you and say things. But this was the first time I've heard like, you get the old Sasquatch vision.
The movie.
The Wonka vision. But
that's right.
I don't know. I thought that was a wild one. I hadn't heard anything that crazy. But what about you, Luke?
Yeah, the one that comes to mind is the Roger episode, only because it does have a Sasquatch element. And we had gotten into this, as Nate said, we started this thing talking about Bigfoot, and then we started getting into giants. I think episode 11 of our show, and we're 4 years into this now. But we had this episode where a guy dug up giant bones on his property. Old Minnesota farmer, like salt earth, didn't even have like a cell phone. I think he had to call him on a landline. Like this guy didn't have a computer. He was like super believable to this point. And so we go through this episode talking about him digging up giant bones in a mound on his property. He has a farm in Minnesota. Says his wife won't come up there because it's scary and weird there now. And this episode was like the turning point for me in our show, because we're kind of wrapping up his story about the giant bones, the government coming out and telling him to refill it in. It's part of the Native American Repatriation Act, or whatever, never say that, where you can't dig in it anymore, even though it's on his property. He claims he found giant bones in there. And we remembered at the end to ask him about Bigfoot, because we were like, that's how we usually start all of our shows, is what are your thoughts on Bigfoot? And so we're like, hey, by the way, Roger, we meant to ask you at the beginning, sorry about this. What are your thoughts on Bigfoot? And he's like, well, I got 3 that come up to the barn. He's like, they braid my horse's hair. And I've named them. And he starts tells that he's named these 3 Bigfoot. And then he goes out there and he plays his Native American flute for him. And then it goes in, it takes the hardest right turn of all time. He starts talking about how the Bigfoot are actually on this serpent mound on his property when he dug into and found the giant bones. There's actually a portal on the egg that's in the serpent's mouth. And out of this portal comes something called a boar croc. Never heard of it before, but we looked it up. And this is actually like an Egyptian kind of hybrid creature that they believed in, which was like part boar and part croc. I was thinking man, bear, pig there. It was like half boar, half croc, half man, it's like man, bear, pig. But they said it comes out there and it was attacking things. And so the Bigfoot, which you called the Rice Lakers, there's 3. It was, Nate, what were their names? It was White Diamond, Becca,
White Diamond,
and Little One. And they were protecting his farm from these boar crocs.
Yeah.
And
there was a dog man in his driveway as well.
There's a dog man, but
he had all of it. Just it's unbelievable, right?
But the thing is, though, you have this like old salty, crusty farmer from Minnesota, and he's like, "This is what happens on my property. My wife won't come up here, and my neighbor's seen thunderbirds." And he's like, "We've got serpent mound and giant bones. And by the way, these 3 Bigfoot, they come up and they braid my horse's hair, and I play flute music for them." And you're just like,
my favorite part of that story.
What?
He's in the barn. He said he's in his barn, and he's like, well, I just had to tell him the gospel. I had to witness to the Sasquatch.
He preaches to the Sasquatch.
Preaches to the Sasquatch.
And I just, we are so early. This is like episode 30 something. We're like,
somebody has to.
Somebody's got to tell him about the Lord.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was late. I was having communion with Sasquatch this morning.
Right, dude, like that. It was, it was so wild, and he was so matter of fact about these things, and it's such a hard turn. It's like it's one of the more unforgettable. Now we've talked about all kinds of crazy stuff on the show, as well as most of you guys have. Everything from satanic ritual abuse and just wild stuff, portals and pantries. We had an episode with a portal in a pantry, not a porta potty. Yeah. Deep underground military bases and aliens and all. And so you kind of get. There's this level, I think, where you level up into this weirdness. It sort of becomes status quo, right? And but that was really like the turning point where you're like, dude, this is so weird. And he is so matter of fact, like some dude you would see like at the co-op, like buying seed for the farm, and this guy's telling you doesn't have a computer. He's telling these wild stories about boar crocs and portals and Bigfoot. And this intergalactic battle that's happening on his property where he found giant bones. And so wildest, it's there, it's up there, but it was just, I always kind of go back to that one because it was so like it hit you out of left field when we thought we were wrapping the episode. And he's like, oh, by the way, I got more for you. And here's what happened. You're like, dude, don't stop talking. This is
Can I add a follow-up question?
Right. Exactly.
What the heck are you talking about?
So that's the one I go to. Yeah.
I'll tell you, the braiding hair thing is something I heard years ago by who was it? Nate, you might know the guy, Kumbo Baker.
I don't know.
No? So Kumbo years ago came out talking about how he came across cases with Bigfoot where people were having Bigfoot. Maybe it was his horses. I don't know. But the idea of braiding the mane, the hair on the horse, the other side of that story, the other half of that you guys didn't get, that I was told years ago, is that they do that while they're doing the freaky with the horse.
Oh
yeah.
This family show just leveled up to
PG-13. I've heard the little people do it, and they ride the horses at night. They take them out and they ride around like and then they braid their hair. It's not the Sasquatch. That's what I've heard.
Did he see the Sasquatch doing it?
No, I don't think so.
Because I mean, he had so many other weird things happening on that property that maybe it was the little people.
Maybe he just didn't share that with us, and he was holding some things back.
Yeah, maybe that's how we get.
There's a lot of things you can't unsee, and that would be one of them.
I'm a very visual person, and I'm not liking this podcast right now.
I can't unsee it, but I can never talk of it again.
Well, we did have a centaur story on the show. Maybe that's how we got the centaur, the man bear pig. This was a funny email we got. This guy was talking about how back in it was like the early, it's like 1920. 1910, somewhere in there. He said his grandpa was a very serious guy. He used to tell the story. He said that they were on their farm at night. He had like a huge family, bunch of people, 3 generations of people out on the front porch in the middle. You just, it's hot. They sat outside and they said, sure enough, this thing comes running down their driveway. And we probably emailed this guy a couple times, and it stops and everyone sees it and they all look, and at the end of their driveway is, no joke, a centaur. And it looks at them, and then they all look at it, and then it takes off into the bushes. And his grandpa used to tell the story at like family gatherings for years that they saw one of these things, and it's like straight out of Narnia, right? And Luke and I were early in our show going, I mean, are people just messing with us? And we emailed the guy back. He's like, no, I swear, I promise. My grandpa told the story like all the time. His whole family saw it, and I think he was the youngest. So and
the craziest thing was a reverse centaur. So it was no pants and just a horse head.
Terrifying.
Everybody, way more terrifying. Actually,
that's the hardest part about these shows is who do you believe and why do you believe them? And I guess maybe everyone can go around and just kind of maybe wrap it up. That like, what was your mindset before you started your podcast, and what is it now? I think would be a good like wrap up sort of discussion.
Why do I feel like everybody's waiting for me to say something?
No, you don't have. I'll go first.
Come on, Tony. Come on, Tony.
Let me go quickly here because I think this is fascinating. Because for me, I've always been the skeptic on our show with Nate. Because Nate talked about the top of it. He had this 10,000 hours of listening to Bigfoot shows while he was remodeling houses, and so and I've always had a mild interest, maybe mild to moderate interest in Bigfoot, and so I just thought it'd be fun to talk about these things that are weird. It is fun, right? It's fascinating to think about and sort of investigate and have discourse around things that don't have real solid answers, and just try to figure it out. And that's what we've been trying to do, get better answers to maybe unanswerable questions. But doing that all through a biblical worldview and through a biblical lens is really where our show lives. And what I was very anti having an alien discussion just at the beginning. I was like, I don't want to talk about this. This is stupid. Like, this alien thing is all stupid. I don't want to talk about it. And for me, I think we had enough guests on that were giving compelling sort of paradigms for understanding this and framing the alien phenomena, and kind of looking at what the narrative is that's out there versus what the Bible has to say about stuff like that. With what it was an extraterrestrial. By definition, angels are extraterrestrial. They're not of Earth, and we are. And so, sort of changing the way I was to think about and discuss this thing, I found space within my expanded paradigm to discuss it. And I was very much not in that space. I remember telling Nate, I don't want to have an alien show. Let's not do this. This is dumb. We're going to lose all. If we had any credibility to start out with, we're about to lose it. but we always say that our show is a journey podcast, and we do start with Bigfoot and these experts in Bigfoot, and we've journeyed down into all the things that we just sort of talked about. And to, Dr. Michael Heiser said on our show, who was just really one of the, in our minds, Nate in my mind, I won't speak for Nate, but in our minds, it was, he's really a cornerstone to these conversations as a Christian. He wrote the book, The Unseen Realm, and he said that if just one of these accounts are true, that we listen to and talk about, if it's just one is true, then it breaks the paradigm, and you have to expand your paradigm to encompass these things, right? So if just one Bigfoot sighting is real, just one of these alien encounters is real, and just one out of the thousands and thousands that happen, then we've got to figure out how we fit this inside our worldview. And for me, that actually happened. And we lost Mike last year, and he was just he became a great friend, but I think he was revolutionary in the way he compiled and put things out there. And when he said those things to us, it really changed the way I thought about those things. For me personally, the journey has really been like expanding my paradigm to consider. And I think having these conversations around the weird things in the Bible and the weird things people experience is something that's missing. This discourse is missing, not in this circle right here by any means, but just in Christendom in general. And I think we do ourselves a great disservice if we don't talk about the weird stuff and try to contextualize that from the point of view of our faith. If we don't do that, then I always say this: the world's more than willing to disciple us in what they want us to believe, what the world wants us to believe about these things, and that is always going to be contrary to the truths, the biblical truths, and what the Bible says. And so that journey's been wild to me, like just kind of flipping that switch on and saying, I can consider this, and I do now, and I have a good answer, I think, for what's happening here. Now, are we going to know? Maybe not till we have disclosure, but we're getting very close to that. So, yeah, for me, that's been the journey sort of around our content.
You get the Alien Award.
Thanks, I'll take it. Gave me an iced out chain, baby.
What about you, Tony?
When I first started, for me, the way the podcast started, I was a tractor trailer driver, and God called me to do this podcast. And I've told the story before, but I won't go over deep into it. But just it wasn't my comfort zone. I mean, I was literally driving my truck. I felt the Holy Spirit say, "You're going to be a podcast. You're going to work with Wes Comer from Sasquatch Chronicles." Never talked to the guy my entire life, and a month later, he's calling me, and that launched the podcast. And it was a big growing experience for me because, up to that point, I was interested in the Bigfoot topic, listened to Wes's show, really looked around online about it. But outside of the topic, I really didn't talk about a whole lot of the stuff. Really wasn't really that interested. And I felt a strong pull to start a show where you talk about everything. And that was very uncomfortable for me. I didn't know what to talk about. Like, I remember my first UFO show was in the first 5 episodes. This guy Roger was on, and he's talking about this up close encounter that he had of a UFO. I mean, like, it's huge. It was right there. And I'm just like, what the heck what am I doing? Like, what? And then, so like, there's this whole inner struggle because I knew how the podcast started. So I had this, I put this pressure on myself of, making sure I don't let God down and take this show in a direction it wasn't meant to go. And I didn't know what that direction was supposed to be. And kind of like what you said, it was the show. I've come to understand that the show is about people's experiences, but it's also about my journey through these topics. For 7 years, 650 episodes, you get to hear the transition of my mindset, where first episode was farmer sees 2 Sasquatch in a field. And it was just me talking to this guy in Pennsylvania, to now we're talking about porta potties and other realms and stuff. And it's like, how did you get there? And it was a slow trickle effect of me being exposed to people's experiences and finding that, some of these wild experiences have been able to be verifiable, and that shapes your mindset, and you have to take that into consideration. And for me, like, when I first started the show, my first email, the first email I ever got was a woman saying she saw Slender Man. Never brought her on the show because I wasn't ready for it. If somebody emailed me now and said, I saw Slender Man, let's go. Tulpa, baby, let's do this. But people would email about their dreams. And early in those days, I was like, why do I want to talk to you about your dreams? I have dreams too. There's nothing weird about that. I never in those days looked at everything the way I look at it now. And now I'm like, you dope. Like the whole scripture is riddled with dreams and dream interpretation and God speaking to people through dreams. Like, of course, the dream state is something to be thought about and talked about. And then when you start talking to people about the dream state and then you start learning about lucid dreaming, well, what is lucid dreaming? Because I've never experienced that, but they're saying that this is a dream that they had that was more real than here. And the things that happened there seem to overlap here. And then you start talking to people who had experience with other people in their dreams. And then in this reality, they share notes and say, yeah, I saw you in my dream last night too. And yeah, that room, yeah, I saw, yeah. And it's like, well, what is that? You know? And so it just takes you down this whole road that, again, you guys started a show and you're like, let's talk about Bigfoot. And it's like, well, that's like Bigfoot is just a topic now that we do. And it all just was like this domino effect. So like for me, it was just this, I feel like it's a personal journey as well. I look at my show as, it's like a mixed bag. And I'm fairly convinced that reality is far more stranger than I can fathom. And you know, I'm here for the ride, you know, and I don't really, I also struggled early on. I'm like, you know, I felt this like almost weight, like, well, I'm the host of the show. Like, I don't want to, like you were talking about validation and, you know, hurting your credibility and stuff. And I was just like, you know, if I bring this person on, if I talk about this, like, what is that going to do to the show? Am I going to ruin the show? And I just got to the point where I'm like, you know what? Just like with people's salvation, like it's not my job to make you believe in Jesus Christ as your savior. That's not my job. My job is to lead you to the water. It's between you and the Holy Spirit. My job's done. And so I look at it the same way with the show where it's like, you know, I present the stories of people's experiences that they've gone through. I've personally experienced things that I can't explain that people would call me crazy for. I've talked to people on the show that have shared their personal experiences that I've been able to verify that if I couldn't have verified, I'm like, I don't know. So I'm at the point where it's just like, listen, we present the story to you as the audience. It's your decision to choose what you want to believe. It's my personal journey, but it's the audience as well. It's their personal journey through the weird. And that's just kind of where I leave it at.
Yeah.
And that,
yeah, I think I agree with like Tony's saying is like, we've experienced a similar thing where I thought we would learn more over time, but I've got more questions now than when we started 10 years ago. And like Tony was saying, we present these stories for the audience to listen to. It's up to them to judge what they think about it, because we get people, you know, that email and be like, well, how do you vet these stories? Or that guy's story was impossible. And I'm like, look, it's impossible for me to say that he did or didn't experience what he experienced. That's ridiculous to me. And whether somebody physically saw a biological Sasquatch or it was just a mirage or a hallucination, whatever it was, the effect, the impact it has on that person is exactly the same. It's changed their life forever. So I've got people that have come to us on air, off air, people that didn't even know we did a show that have told us these stories. And you can tell, man, they have no reason to make this stuff up. I used to haul hay for an old rancher when I was a kid. I know him my whole life. And after he heard about our show, he pulled me aside one day and said that he saw a Sasquatch on his ranch 30 years ago. And I was like, well, how come you never told me that the whole time when I was hauling hay for you? And there'd be no reason for this guy to make that story up. And with all the crazy stories that we talk about, from portals to duendes to Sasquatch, extraterrestrials, whatever, time slips, I can't tell you the amount of people that have emailed us and thanked us for bringing these stories to light, because they thought that they had a weird, wild experience and they never told nobody because they thought they were the only one. And they were afraid that they were losing their minds. But through podcasts like all of these, all you guys shows as well, is like, it makes people more comfortable and then it takes the pressure off them. They're like, man, maybe I'm not crazy. Turns out over 100 people have seen this glimmer man. You know, I thought I was the only one. And so it's helped people out. You don't realize when you're joking around, jackassing around with your friend on a podcast that you're actually helping them. Like, I was really depressed or whatever, and they'll write in like, you guys literally changed the way I was thinking. You brought me out of the slump I was in, and I can't thank you enough. And that kind of stuff, that never crosses my mind when we're in here just goofing off. But I think that the shared experience. I think everybody, no matter who you are, likes to sit around a campfire and hear crazy stories. That's what I think.
Yeah.
And it's not my job to prove whether they're real or not. I don't think you ever will. Like we always joke about with Bigfoot. I hope it's not discovered, because then that ends all the fun. The fun is the mystery.
Right. It's like when they show the aliens and signs and they ruin the whole movie. I'm not kidding. I'm gonna die on that hill. I'm gonna die on that hill. If they'd just not shown you the aliens and signs, it would have been so much scarier.
I loved that movie. I don't know what you're talking about.
Also, their one weakness is water, and they went to a planet with 2/3 of water. I mean, come on, it's flawed from the beginning.
Talk about higher intelligence, right? Yeah,
bunch of dummies flying around.
Ours is very similar to y'all's, where we just started this podcast just for fun, because before this, we've been doing content, or I've been doing content for Sunday Cool 7 years now, I think. And just doing like funny skit videos for like churches and youth groups and stuff like that. And then when Andrew came on, was it 2 years now or 3?
Almost 3.
Yeah. We would just start having the funnest conversations of like what we saw on the internet or TikTok or like whatever. And it's like, yeah, dude, we really need to start a podcast. And we didn't know what we were doing or which way it was going to go. Definitely didn't expect it to be where it is now. But our prayer the whole time is just, God, use the podcast however you want. In the moment it becomes about us, just take it away. And he uses us dummies that talk about our favorite poop stories and peeing on our legs when we see a UFO. And we get just so many emails and messages of people what you guys are doing is so rad. And like I've opened up my Bible for the first time in 10 years or whatever, just because we talk about scripture a lot and like how it relates to everything. And we're very not educated in anything.
But everything.
Yes.
But yeah, we just have fun with it. And I feel like now what the podcast has done, it's like, I feel like I've taken the red pill from the Matrix, and I just see like everything like way differently now.
Yeah.
You know, like, but it's like, I mean, from a young age, I always knew that there was something more like in the spiritual realm and stuff, just because I've had encounters at a young age. But now with this journey we've been on with like listening to you guys and stuff, it's like, it's just clarifying everything. You know, it's like, oh yeah, I'm not crazy for experiencing this or thinking this, like,
or just talking about it. I think that's one of the biggest thing is my confidence has changed of like, okay, it's okay to talk about this. It's okay to question this. It's okay to make a joke out of this. Like, because at the beginning, I'm like, I don't know if people are going to really like it, just listening to us talking about whatever, because we're not experts in it. But I think that's the coolest thing is seeing a community build around what we're doing and like be all in and be super excited and see us as friends and say, you should talk about this next. And then we do. And then it just builds a community where it's like, listen, I'm not the only crazy person that's talking about this. All right. We got tons of other people that, are, asking questions or looking into it. So it's just been a really cool thing just to see how our minds have just been a little more open, but also just more firm on whenever it leads back to spiritual stuff. It's always like, it's just cementing our faith even more. We're like, but golly, he's still in control and he's doing all these things. And
yeah, we've definitely found a genre of people that it's really cool of how our podcast works. It's like we can talk about like really deep, heavy stuff, but it's like all packaged within like a humor based thing. So it's like, we don't take ourselves that seriously, but like it definitely, I don't know, eases the tension of, I don't know.
Oh, just the heavy topics. Yeah, man. Cuts it all off.
It's fun how we're all evolving too. It's like, you guys, it started with all jokes and now you're like buying in and now you're like educating your audience. I started out a complete skeptic. Like I never studied anything about the Book of Enoch when I went to Bible college, and Josh starts talking about it. I'm like, okay, guy. But and then
you came from a good perspective too, because like not usually the perspective you would want, but like you didn't have no podcasting or like listen. Like, so it's like, so to all be on a different journey, different path, and all of us like coming together and asking tough questions. It's just been super fun. And finding the funny is that's the most important thing for me. It's like, cause I know we all work better, especially me and Josh, like when we get in that goofy state, that's where we thrive. And so that the fact that we're able to throw in all this heavy spiritual interdimensional stuff with, red heifers and all that stuff. It's like, it's just cool to be able to joke about it and for another episode.
Did you know 9/11 was an inside job?
See you next week.
Cliffhanger. Yeah. No, I agree. I think that you start these podcasts. I think for me it was a moment when we were in. I was talking about our story of going to Peru, but when we were standing at Sacsayhuaman, and it's looking at these giant megalithic stones that are like, perfectly smooth on 8 sides, fit together like Legos, and you're standing at this wall that's towering over all of us. You're like, this is massive. Like, how did they move these stones? Some of these stones are so huge. And I think it's one thing to talk about stories, and it's another thing to stand there and stare at it and touch it and be like, how did they build this? And one of the things we've talked a lot about is the megaliths and sort of this ancient construction, this knowledge that they built these things all over the world. And then when you actually get to go to one, and it was kind of cool that our fans rallied around us, and Luke and I got to go to this place and basically hang out. We did a live podcast while we're walking around and being in downtown Cusco and touching these like green stones that are just look like marshmallows fit together. And they've been there for, thousands of years. And you're like, one of them was 12 sides. And like, how did they do this? And it feels like, when you grow up in the church, and a lot of us have, you hear these stories of giants, David and Goliath, and you don't really understand. That's like a little snapshot of like a whole narrative that has sort of been brushed over. Like, there were giants and they were killing them and they were exterminating them. And then you see things that maybe they built. And then you start to reverse engineering that. Like, okay, these stones look like they were lifted or levitated into place, shaped in the air, or whatever. They were heated up, or they were, however they did it, there was some advanced knowledge. And I think then you have to sort of reverse it. Like, at some point, the whole giant narrative for me has changed, that there were angels are probably a physical being, not a spiritual being, an actual physical being. They're just not here. And I think that I've changed my perspective, because you grow up in the church, everything that you don't understand is just mystical. It just floats around. There's no but it's like, no, they hooked up with women and they birthed these giants that and there's remnants all over the world. And I think the physical aspect of these things that you read about in ancient history and all the mythologies around the world and every single culture's, their story, they all kind of tell the same story. They talk about a flood. They talk about giants. They talk about these weird things. And growing up in the church, it was like, okay, so maybe angels aren't spiritual beings. Maybe they're like upgraded humans, and they came down here and messed with everything. Like, why do we overcomplicate things? Like, so I think that's the mind shift that I had, because I never really understood, what is an angel? You hear stories of angel people. I was driving my car and all of a sudden this angel saved me. I got in this car wreck, or I showed up, and how people have these encounters with angels, and you hear about them all the time, and you're like, what are they?
Yeah, they made a movie about that. They played baseball, didn't they?
Yeah. How many eyes did they have?
Yeah, they only played outfield though. They weren't infielders. They weren't that good.
But it's just like putting a sort of a, angel could roll into town today, hang out, have dinner with him, and ask some questions, and then he could leave. And you're like, well, people say all the time, like, oh, well, angels can take on the form of anything. And I'm like, I don't think so. So that's where my mind has changed. I think their resting state is something that's like a human, and
it's not just spirit. So when you say spiritual, you mean it's just not a spirit, not just a
there
spirit.
Are spirits,
right?
But I think that there are.
Just to clarify, because spiritual gets a little muddy. Yeah, they live in another dimension.
But anyway, this is kind of a taste. I just want to say thanks to all you guys for wanting to do this SQUATCHELLA festival. If you want to, I guess we can all pitch this event right now. Like, this is happening at Belmont University at their Fisher Center, which is like an $85 million building. It's awesome.
I think you're short like $100 million on that. I think it's a $185 million building.
I heard it was $85 billion.
We're getting paid $85 million.
I don't think it's 180
billion with a B.
0.5 trillion.
But anyway, it's
two
with inflation. It's now trillions.
That's right.
It's $1 trillion building, and come on down. No, but we're going to do this live on stage. Everyone's going to have sort of a topic, and we're going to just like your typical music festival, we're going to shotgun blast you back to back to back to back to back all day long with all the weirdness, and it's called Squatchella. You can get tickets now at SQUATCHELLA.com. And we're really pumped that all you guys we all do something different. We all have a different vibe, and it's cool to see, some sort of weird idea kind of come to reality, and here we are. So I don't know if you guys, want to tease anything else, but
no, it's gonna be rad. It's gonna be so fun.
I'm stoked.
Yeah.
It's better have a song.
Andy's gonna do the whole show without a shirt.
Absolutely.
That's like,
we got a Squatchella banana hammock that's pre-ordered right now.
and the tickets just sold out.
Yeah, there we go. And they're gone.
Cheering the most because, they have some intimate camping situations that between the two of them.
Weird.
But we also have a VIP ticket. We can talk about that. There's a limited amount of VIP tickets. We're going to have a section there where you can come backstage, hang out with us. We're going to do Q&A, take pictures. You can get some signed posters, and it's going to be a good time. So,
and the VIP includes Andy washing every single person's foot.
Yes, sponge baths.
Yeah.
And I will come to you.
Those feet.
I will go to your residence. Yes. So it'll be a long night, but I'll be there. Just wake up, your feet's just being wet. What in the world?
What's it?
Go to sleep.
Just like JC, man. Washing feet.
Yeah. But appreciate you guys.
It's August 3rd, right?
Yeah. Thank you, Tom.
August 3rd.
Yes.
Mark it on your calendars.
Yes. August 3rd, Nashville, Tennessee.
I'll make sure I'm there.
Make sure you guys are all there in this virtual room. But join us. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be like a music festival, but with podcasts. You get to see your favorite podcasts live, do their thing, and maybe you'll see Andy's feet. Yeah, we can't say that's for sure, but that may be the special guest.
No, it's guaranteed. It's guaranteed. Okay. It'll be very, very aware, very apparent. Actually, probably the first thing you smell or see when you walk in.
No, it's amazing. Like Luke and I went to a movie premiere there the other day, and it's an amazing building, awesome facility, theater style. Everything's just incredible. It's funny that the juxtaposition of a bunch of dudes talking about Sasquatch in this building will be hilarious on its own. And it's like one of the nicest buildings in Tennessee. Can't believe we get to have this event.
We're degrading it.
Yeah, we are degrading it.
And they're letting all of us into it.
Right. I've heard they're giving us honorary PhDs too. Belmont is. So that's pretty great.
In Sasquology.
Come on down. There's gonna be a VIP hanging out. There's gonna be merch booths, photos. Tony's bringing a portal potty. We got a huge electronic wall. There's gonna be videos. There's gonna be just an amazing staff.
Fire.
Will be fire.
Dragons.
Won't tell you when.
Just guys are bringing live gators.
That's right.
It's gonna happen.
Board Crocs.
Squatchella.com.
Perhaps.
Get your tickets now because they're gonna go quick.
Absolutely, they will.
Awesome. Right. Thanks, boys.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
This will be fun to do in person.
Thanks,
Yeah, you're all the best.